Chapter 12. Jehoash was 7 years old when he began to reign. In the 7th year of Jehu began Jehoash to reign, and he reigned 40 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Zibiah of Bathsheba. And Jehoash did that which was right in the eyes of the Lord all his days, wherein Jehoiada the priest instructed him. Howbeit the high places were not taken away, and the people still sacrificed and offered in the high places. And Jehoash said to the priest, all the money of the hallowed things that is brought into the house of the Lord, in current money, the money of persons for whom each man is rated, all the money that cometh into any man's heart to bring into the house of the Lord, let the priest take it to them, every man from him that bestoweth it upon him. And they shall repair the breaches of the house, wherever so any breach shall be found. But it was so, that in 23 year of King Jehoash, the priest had not repaired the breaches of the house. Then King Jehoash called for Jehoiada the priest, and for the other priests, and said unto them, why repair you not the breaches of the house? Now therefore take no longer money from them that bestow it upon you, but deliver it for the breaches of the house. And the priest consented that they should take no longer money from the people, neither repair the breaches of the house. And Jehoiada the priest took a chest, and bored a hole in the lid of it, and set it beside the altar on the right side, as one cometh into the house of the Lord. And the priest that kept the threshold put therein all the money that was brought into the house of the Lord. And it was so, when they saw that there was much money in the chest, that the king's scribe and the high priest came up, and they put it up in bags, and counted the money that was found in the house of the Lord. And they gave the money that was weighed out into the hands of them that did the work, that had the oversight of the house of the Lord, and they paid it out to the carpenters and the builders that worked upon the house of the Lord, and to the masons, and to the hewers of stone, and for buying timber and hewn stone to repair the breaches of the house of the Lord, and for all that was laid out for the house to repair it. But there were not made for the house of the Lord cups of silver, snuffers, basins, trumpets, any vessels of gold, or vessels of silver, of the money that was brought into the house of the Lord, for they gave that to them that did the work, and repaired therewith the house of the Lord. Moreover, they reckoned not with the men into whose hand they delivered the money to give to them that did the work, for they dealt faithfully. The forfeit money and the sin money was not brought into the house of the Lord. It was the priests. Then Hazael, king of Aram, went up, and fought against Gath, and took it. And Hazael set his face to go up to Jerusalem. And Jehoash, king of Judah, took all the hallowed things that Jehoshaphat, and Jehoram, and Ahaziah his fathers, kings of Judah, had dedicated, and his own hallowed things, and all the gold that was found in the treasures of the house of the Lord, and of the king's house. And he sent it to Hazael, king of Aram, and he went away from Jerusalem. Now the rest of the acts of Joash, and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And his servants arose and made a conspiracy, and smote Joash at Beth Millo, on the way that goeth down to Selah. For Josachar, the son of Shimeath, and Jehoshabad, the son of Shomer, his servants smote him, and he died, and they buried him with his fathers in the city of David. And Amaziah his son reigned in his stead. All right, let's go back up to verse 1. And we remember yesterday little Joash had been hidden away, and Athaliah had, while she was killing all the seed royal, they had hid little Joash away and brought him out and anointed him king, and they have slain Athaliah. And we're going to pick this story up now. Just after this happened, Joash is 7 years old, and that's how old Joash was when they anointed him to be the king over Judah. Verse 1, and Jehoash was 7 years old when he began to reign. So we see now they have changed the name of Joash to Jehoash. It means basically the same thing. It's a little bit lengthened version of Joash, God's fire, God's flame. In this case, God has fired or flamed, and we would say God has burned. He has burned. He's 7 years old. 7 is perfection. 7 means perfection. Years, this understanding, even this circle. It's like a circle that goes around. Now there is perfect understanding in this circle that goes around. 2, verse 2. In the 7th year of Jehu began Joash to reign, and he reigned 40 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Zibiah of Beersheba. So even now, in the 7th year of Jehu, 7th year that Jehu reigns, even this perfect understanding of Jehu, God, who represented God himself in his judgment, begins Joash to reign, or God has burned, God has devoured by fire, begins him to reign. And this is because these are the judgments of God that come down from the law, even this devouring fire. And we're going to see Jehoash reigns for 40 years. This 40 is the probation in these circles. It's the probation in this understanding. And he reigns in Jerusalem. And Jerusalem is that place of peaceful teachings. His mother's name is Zibiah, and she is from Beersheba. And Beersheba is that well of the oath, well of this, even this sevenfold oath. And Zibiah means this roe, wild beauty, is basically what we would translate this to mean. Wild beauty, untamed beauty. Verse 3, and Jehoash did that which was right in the eyes of the Lord all his days, wherein Jehoiada the priest instructed him. And we know Jehoiada was the priest. Jehoiada means God understands. God knows these things because God's caused them all to happen. God's caused all these things to happen. And Jehoash does those things that are right. He's a child. He's 7 years old, and Jehoiada does instruct him to stay in the ways of God. And he does that which is right in the eyes of the Lord. Howbeit, the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and offered in the high places. And these high places were these places that had been set up. They called them high places because they were on every high place. When you looked upward, you would see these places they had built to go worship these not gods. And under every leafy tree and every pleasant place that you would go, there would be one of these detestable places. 5, and Joash said to the priest, all the money of the hallowed things that is brought into the house of the Lord, current money, the money of the persons for whom each man is rated, all the money that comes into any man's heart to bring into the house of the Lord. And Joash is figured out why now the people are still going to these high places, because the Lord's house lies in a state of disrepair. See, it's fallen down, fallen apart. Ain't nobody wants to go there. 6, let the priest take it to them, every man from him that bestoweth upon him, and they shall repair the breaches of the house wheresoever any breach shall be found. So Joash is telling the priests, he says, now let's take the money that comes into the house of God. Let's take all this money, all the money that comes from these people, every man that takes it from his friend or his acquaintance, all the money that belongs to God. And we're going to find out God had made a separation in that which was his and that which belonged to the priest. He said, let's take all this money and let's fix this house up wherever it needs fixed at. 7. But it was so that in 3 and 20th year of King Jehoash the priest had not repaired the breaches of the house. So we're going to find out now. He's 20. He was 7 when he starts reigning. He starts his reign over Judah. And now he's 23, 16 years later, and the house of God still ain't fixed. 3. Complete 20th redemption in this understanding, because we're going to find out the whole problem here of what's going on. And this is just an example of what we can witness even today going on. They have turned it into a lucrative business, and that's what we're going to try to point out here. 8. Then King Jehoash called for Jehoiada the priest and for the other priests, and said unto them, Why repair you not the breaches of the house? Now therefore take no longer the money from them that bestow it upon you, but deliver it for the breaches of the house. So 16 years later, they still ain't done nothing. There's plenty of money come through the house. We're going to find that out. There's plenty of money come through the first year to do the job, but they didn't do it. 9. And the priest consented that they should take no longer the money from the people, neither repair the breaches of the house. Well, surely they have consented, because they hadn't done anything anyway. See, they've been taking all the money, but they haven't been repairing the breaches of the house. 10. And Jehoiada the priest took a chest, and bored a hole in the lid of it, and set it beside the altar on the right side as one comes into the house of the Lord. And the priest that kept the threshold put therein all the money that was brought into the house of the Lord. So now Jehoiada takes a chest, a box, and he drills a hole in the top of it, or cuts a hole in the top of this lid. What he's making is a giant penny bank, and he sets it inside the house of God there, before you get to the altar, inside the doorway as you come into the house of God. And the priest now that kept the threshold, or the separation place of people, made sure the money got in the box. 11. And it was so, when they saw that there was much money in the chest, that the king's scribe and the high priest came up, and they put it up into bags, and counted the money that was found in the house of the Lord. So now they see the box fills up, and now the priest and the king's scribe, this king's scribe is the guy who would write everything down. He was the sefer, and a sefer sounds just like the sefer. A sefer is a book, and the sefer is the guy who would write in the book. So he comes up with the priest, the high priest, and they count the money up, and they put it up in bags, and all the money that was found there in the house of God, because they're going to see there's plenty of money to fix the house of God. That wasn't the problem. The problem was those who were collecting it. See, this whole money thing was a bad thing to get started anyway, but it's done. It's done. It's one of those things God thought you might fix, but He sees you didn't fix it. But you've only made it worse, and you fell into the trap. See, right? Yeah, you fell into the trap. You made God lucrative, and that was never the purpose. See, why would we teach the truth? Why would we teach the law of God? Why would we teach understanding to people if we're making money off their not understanding? See, it went backwards. So let's take all the lucrative out of it. Let's just pour it out for free. Now, if you get gain, that money, let's just call it polluted, not for the purpose of God. Let's call it for the purpose of the other thing. Let's call this a devoted money. Let's call this money dedicated. God's going to dedicate it for His purpose, another purpose. 12, and they gave the money that was weighed out into the hands of them that did the work. And they had the oversight of the house of the Lord, and they paid it out to the carpenters and to the builders that wrought upon the house of the Lord. So instead of the priest and these being over the money now, they've just They take the money and they give it to the men who are doing the work. These ones that had the oversight of the men who did the work of the house of God. These carpenters, these builders, 13, and to the masons and to the hewers of stone, and for the buying timber and hewing stone to repair the breaches of the house of the Lord, for all that was laid out for the house to repair it. Because this is what the masons and the hewers of stone, these carpenters and these builders all did, see. They went through, made a list of what needed fixed, drawed it out how it needed to be fixed. It would cost this much, period, pay us this much, and the work was done, see. And we're going to find out, because that's honesty, and that's how they worked. 14. But there was not made for the house of the Lord cups of silver, snuffers, basins, trumpets, any vessels of gold or vessels of silver of the money that was brought into the house of the Lord. So none of this money that was brought into the house of God was used to make these instruments, these snuffers, these basins, trumpets, vessels of gold, vessels of silver, these things that they would use worship of God. 5. For they gave that to them that did the work, and repaired therewith the house of the Lord. So basically, it was just about taking all the money that come in to repair the house, because they had let the house get to that point. See, they had let the house dilapidate because they had been turned for a long period of time, and what they've done would be even more horrid than we could realize what they've done there. 16. Moreover, they reckoned not with the men into whose hand they delivered the money to give to them that did the work, for they dealt faithfully. Not like some others we just mentioned earlier, these priests and those that was over that, those that should have been dealing faithfully, but, they was making a lot of money now. And God does want to prosper us now with a lot of money. See? That way we can fall into the trap, and He can take us in a snare now. For you desire gold more than understanding. Now, if you teach the people the truth, if you give everybody understanding, there wouldn't be no sin, see? And you'd be out of job. And that's the whole ideal here, to put you out of work. 17. The forfeit money and the sin money was not brought into the house of the Lord. It was the priests. And we'll find out that was the law. This forfeit money was trespass money. See, if you sin against your neighbor, there's a penalty. See, there was a penalty for this. Well, they have totally made it over where these penalties are all turned into money now. See, God said, if the journey's far away, turn it into some money. But we're talking about just people down the street. And the sin money, this money, when you had offense, you had sinned. Okay, ain't nobody perfect. When you sinned, there was a penalty. See? There was a penalty. And what did they do? They've turned it all into money, see? Money, 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 money. Give me some more money. Well, take all the money, and that'll be your reward. Then Hazael, 18, king of Edom, went up, fought against Gath, and took it. And Hazael set his face to go up to Jerusalem. Verse 18. That's the captivity. 18. Yeah. We see Hazael. Remember Hazael. This one that perceives God. This one that sees God. This one that sees the mighty one or perceives the mighty one. He's the king of Aram over these enlightened ones. Remember God had told Eliah to go down there and anoint him, and Elisha had. 19. And Joash, king of Judah, took all the hallowed things that Jehoshaphat and Jehoram and Ahaziah, his fathers, king of Judah, had dedicated, and his own hallowed things, and all the gold that was found in the treasures in the house of the Lord and of the king's house, and sent it to Hazael, king of Edom. And he went away from Jerusalem. So we're going to see Hazael, he's gone up and he's conquered Gath. Gath is the wine press. See, Gath is that wine press. And he's set his face now to go against Jerusalem, even this place of the peaceful teachings. But we're going to see Joash gathers up all the gold, all the silver, all the treasures, all these things that were hallowed, that had been set aside, see, to do the work of God, to be used for the service of God. These things that have been set aside, dedicated for the purpose of God. All the things that Jehoshaphat, God has punished through judgment. Jehoram, God has exalted. Ahaziah, those who God possesses. See, this is that which God's dedicated to God. This thing God's taken over. These God's punished. He's going to use them now, see, because they have robbed God. They've robbed God. We're going to find the prophets are going to tell us about it. He gives everything to Hazael, and Hazael goes away from Jerusalem. He doesn't take the city. Now the rest of the acts of Joash and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah? Yes, there we'll find them out. There we will find them out. 21, and his servants arose and made a conspiracy and smote Joash at Beth-Millo on the way that goeth down to Selah. So we're going to see now, Joash had been a pretty good fella. He done what God wanted him to do. He couldn't get rid of these high places, but he had a little trouble. It don't look like he was getting much help from a lot of people around there. But his servants now, they've conspired against him. And they killed Joash at Beth-Millo. Beth-Millo is this house of the rampart, this house of the ramp to get over the wall. And it's in the way that goes down to Selah. Selah is this highway that going up. Selah means this highway that goes upward. And that's where they slew Joash. For Josachar, 22, the son of Shimeath, and Jehoshaphat, the son of Shomer, his servants, smote him, and he died. And they buried him with his fathers in the city of David. And Amaziah, his son, reigns in his stead. So we'll see now, Amaziah, those who are strengthened in God are going to reign in his stead. This will be the next generation, those who are strengthened in God. And we'll see Yoshakar now. Yoshakar, as God remembers. Shimeath is the report. This messengers, or the one who is reporting what you have done, see. Because God's remembering now the sins that you've done, how you've robbed God. See, it's going to be called to God's remembrance. And Yehoshaphat, God has bestowed, or God has rewarded you now with Shomer, this keeper, this watchman. See, or the one you should be able to watch, because this is the one what we're talking about. God is going to appoint one now to be the keeper, or the watchman, or the warning, or however you want to interpret it. This was your reward that God gave you for robbing him now. All right, we're going to move on to chapter 13.